Hello, everybody. Tony Bo here. This is the Belongfulness Show. I don't know how we call it yet. It's Belongfulness, and this is a show. And we're doing audio, we're doing video, and I'm hanging out with Brad Kerner, who is the proprietor of Eco Evolution Cafe, aka the Eco Dude.
There you go.
And I am just so excited to have you on this program, Brad. You and I feel like we are going to do some great things together. So let me just give everybody a little context for how we first connected. My wife Christina and I were looking for where we wanted to move outside of New York City. We were living in New York, had our time, ready to move somewhere else. And we started looking for somewhere outside the city where we could still commute. It was not too big, not too small, somewhere where there was some energy, some community. And some friends of hers had recommended Norwalk. And we knew nothing about Connecticut before coming to visit. But we checked out Norwalk. We went to a restaurant across the street, a bar across the street from your cafe called Donovan's,
Yeah.
which was kind of a well known spot. And then we wanted a cup of coffee, and we literally just went on Google Maps and we're like, "Oh, there's a coffee across the street in this eco cafe thing." And like, "Oh, wonder what this is going to be about." And we walked in there, and you greeted us instantly, like the moment we walked in the door. And you can just tell there was an energy to you, there was an energy to the space, and it was very inviting. It was very welcoming, and it felt like when we were trying to figure out where we wanted to live, one of the things that was very important to me was to feel like we weren't just going to be totally anonymous coming into a town where we would have a really hard time finding people to connect with. And just having that little notion in the back of our heads of like, oh, well, there was that Brad guy at that cafe. Like that seemed like a cool place we could hang out.
I can
It
take
made
credit for your move to Norwalk. I kind of love
Yeah,
that.
exactly. In case the mayor ever asks you, about it, you can definitely log our taxpayer credit to directly to you, attributable to you. So Brad, so thank you, by the way,
You're
for
welcome.
playing a role in the course of our lives before you even
Thank you
knew
for
it.
moving to Norwalk. And there's about
Absolutely.
three people who are kind of in the same situation as you. You need to meet Scarlett because she did the same thing. Actually, she actually bought stuff, and I held it for her in the back of the store for about a month before she actually moved. Why wouldn't we hold it for you? So it was kind of cool. We
that's
love
that's
we love being the welcoming committee, I guess, of South Norwalk.
Well, yeah, and we're going to get into in this conversation the role of third places and why they are so important for a city and all of those things. And in particular, Bradley, kind of one of the messages that I want to kind of explore is if I'm a city that wants to vitalize itself, wants to get more people to come there and spend money in the downtown and lease retail space downtown and those kinds of things, why it would be in their interest to support, subsidize, nurture, encourage spaces like yours. And so I'd love to just explore that a little bit today.
That's awesome.
But first, tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you come to be that guy who was sitting behind the counter when my wife and I first breezed in this past spring?
It's a long story, but I'll give you the cliff notes because I don't know if you actually know the full background of my life. But what I'm doing, what you came into, is a total COVID pivot. It was never part of the plan. It also isn't my dream come true. Like everyone's like, it's so great you followed your passion and dream. I actually had a job that was my dream job before this. Um, I have a master's of public health. I was in the Peace Corps after college, and then got my public health degree. And then ever since then, I worked at Save the Children on our program team, working on adolescent health. I was there for 17 years. I ended up becoming the head of this team, growing the team. I had 11 people. I actually had 13 people working under me in 11 different countries. So we were doing Skype before it was cool. Our team was, which some of my colleagues in other countries call Skypey. We were on Skypey a lot. And I also traveled a ton. Every 6 weeks, I was hopping on a plane going somewhere in the world. And I did that for 15 years. I remember my last trip was January 2020. I was in Malawi, Mozambique, and South Africa. and came home. And I actually had a ticket to go to the Philippines March 2020. Around March 20th is when I had the ticket, and everything shut down on the 13th of March. That trip was
Yeah.
canceled. And that was the last, that January trip was the last one I did, because I went into the lockdown. I made the best of it. I did a lot of cool things, and I did a lot of COVID stereotypical things like making sourdough, and I got chickens, and then I started business planning. And my business plan was really surrounded by this blog that I started in November 2019. So not too far before the lockdown, but it was something I started called My Plastic Free Family Feud. It was one dad's, I don't know if you know that. It was one dad's journey to take on his family to take out the plastics, and they were not into it. Uh, so my we watched the Plastic Ocean, which was a documentary, I think, on Netflix at the time. Not even sure if you can still find it, but look for it. Link it in here if you can find it. And after that, watching that, I was like, we gotta do something. And my family was like, oh no, here goes that again. I was already very like environmentally conscious. I cared a lot. I remember starting a styrofoam recycling thing in my high school growing up. I was always into it, but this was like, no, we really need to do something right now. So family got a little scared. I said, look, I do the bulk of the shopping for this family, so I'm going to take control of what comes in this house, and I'm going to blog about it too and inspire other people to do it. And that's where he came up with My Plastic Free Family Feud,
It
which
rolls right off the tongue.
it's crazy because it was really just supposed to be a blog. I ended up doing like pop-up markets to show people the products I was using. And it was at those markets that people were like, oh yeah, you're the My Plastic Free Family Feud guy, which did not roll off the tongue. And I knew if I was gonna now make a business out of this, I had to rebrand a little bit. And that's how I rebranded as the Eco Dude. So the same Instagram handle I have now, the.eco.dude. If you scroll all the way back to 1,000 posts before, you actually will see that journey of me taking on my family to reduce plastics. It's kind of fun to watch. I was getting
Love
a
it.
lot of new followers all the time. So it was like in my own head, I thought I was like a legend. I got like 1,000 followers in my first 6 months.
The
Maybe.
internet will do that for you. Micro celebrity is a
Yeah.
powerful feeling.
But I felt like I was making a change. A lot of them were in my own community. They were, interested in what I had to say. They were making great comments and coming to my house and recycling stuff that I was offering. Oh yeah, I got all these. I got all these. The same like in the store. We have these TerraCycle boxes in the store. I was doing the same thing at my house. I was in a lot of TerraCycle programs. I didn't have the box, but I was in the program. People were dropping off Tom toothpaste. They were dropping off a whole bunch of stuff at my house. It was fun. It was like,
And
again, part of a great COVID little project.
you have a bunch of boxes in the back of your cafe now that you can drop off like electronics or like different kinds of things. Is that the same thing?
Same. Well, I didn't have the boxes like those I paid for the store, but you can anyone can get onto TerraCycle's website and sign up for one of their 100 programs. They're usually paid for by the corporation leading it, but I was in like the Little Bites program. For all those parents that buy those Little Bites, they were saving the packages and sending them to me, and I was sending them back for them. So yeah, I did do one, because one of the harder things for me to reduce in my family, like we got rid of paper towels that came in the plastic wrap. We got rid of a lot, but it was really hard with 3 kids to get rid of like chips. No, we didn't
Mm.
ever really do the small individual size, but like a big bag of tortilla chips, like come on, who doesn't want that?
Mhm.
And I did shift over to late July chips because they have a TerraCycle program. So I did things like that. I was getting a little too socially minded, but what I ended up doing was getting about 10 other families who wanted to split a chip box, and they would all save their chip bags, and we all did it together, and it lasted about 3 months. It cost all of us $15, and I would send that box back, and then we would keep doing it. And so it was kind of fun. People were dropping off bags and bags of chip bags to my house. It was amazing, and I was
So
shoving them in that box.
that I find very interesting because it's a community activity to overcome some of these institutional barriers to reducing plastic use.
Very true. I mean, then these people, I didn't actually know all of them. I was just going on an Instagram and said, anyone want to do this with me? And I got people signing up who I kind of knew on the fringe of my community, but they were into it. And so it gave me a connection to people who I wouldn't necessarily been connected to because we didn't have kids the same age, which ends up being a very suburban thing. So you
Hmm.
get connected to people in your community that you would never have when you are focusing on something positive and putting it out in the world, instead of just like pictures of family who, that's consumed just by friends and family.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it was cool. I did feel connected to a whole new group of people who actually shared a lot of the same values that I had.
Now you had done that through Instagram where you were kind of known as the eco dude. Do you know if someone who's kind of not, doesn't have that kind of a world or following, like, are there other places or resources where somebody might be able to go and find people, or you think someone could get away with just kind of posting in their usual channels?
They can. I mean, not everyone. It's just I come from a behavior change background because of that work I did at Save the
Mm,
Children. Adolescent health was all about getting young people to change their behaviors to protect themselves against, things that could harm their health. And so I chose to be like an exhibitionist and put things out there and use the behavior change principles I knew to get other people to change. Not everyone wants to do that, and there's so much I don't do that others are doing in the community, like advocacy work. There are amazing sustainability committees in every single town that we live in who are doing amazing work. I became really good friends with the people on our local Fairfield Sustainability Task Force. Norwalk has one. Norwalk has multiple groups, actually. So, I was kind of led with my strength. So, other people, I think your question was, is there an outlet for people who might not use Instagram? There's tons of outlets. There's gardening clubs, there's pollinator pathway people, there's beekeepers. I was kind of part of all those. There's more from the advocacy standpoint. Just look up on your town website who's leading the sustainable task force if they have one.
wow. Okay. So sustainable task force sounds like a phrase that you could use, or sustainability committees. Pollinator pathway sounds very specific. Like that's a thing.
It's a thing. It's people who are really into planting native plants and wildflowers that bring back our pollinators, and who will designate parts of their lawn or all of their lawn or parts of their property to not doing certain things like not using pesticides, not mowing so fast in May,
Mm,
planting native plants and pollinating plants, keeping milkweed there, which is the one plant where monarch butterflies lay their eggs, and most
mm.
people see it as a weed. So, and then there's pollinator pathways everywhere. They're trying to connect all these people. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
My
I
mom
used
got
to
some
do no mow May at my house. My neighbors hated me because
no mo may.
no mow May. That's something led by this group, so you'll hear it more and more. And I used to put up a sign like, "Please, like, when they're doing construction, they always put up that sign
Yeah.
like, don't mind our appearance." But I
Yeah.
think I put up a sign like, "Don't mind our appearance. We're feeding the bees.
Yeah.
The bees they need the early clover that grows in the lawn, and everyone just mows it right away. It's a very, again, suburban thing. Let's start mowing and making everything like perfect. It's mindset. You shift your mind. Dandelions. I didn't use pesticides, so I got to pick dandelions off of my lawn and make tea out of it and eat the greens. Like, you can do that. So, you know,
It's
took a
incredible.
mindset.
I feel like there's a lot of headway to be made just in terms of people being inspired to try stuff. And like you said, you kind of went to a you use the word exhibitionist, right? Like where you said, I'm gonna really put myself out there as I'm gonna try to model the ideal vision of what it looks like to go plastic free. And along the way, people who are following along are going to say, okay, I'm probably not going to go as far as this guy does, but I'm learning a lot of cool stuff. And even if I try some of these things, it's opening me up to, hey, I could plant some stuff that's going to attract butterflies and that's actually good for the ecosystem. That's cool. Like,
Yeah,
I could buy plants. That's not hard,
not hard. And
And
here's my address. You can swing by and look at it if you want to.
right.
I great at
Yeah.
people coming to look at my compost pile, check out my garden, my solar panels. But also, Tony, I was really trying hard not to be perfect because I'm not perfect. I'm not
Mm,
the perfect eco person. There's others I know who are, I'm not vegan. There's others who are do way more than I do for Mama Earth. And that was part of my motto, was progress over perfection. Because the
mm,
people, when I was looking online and you learn a lot through people online. Some of them seem so perfect. Like, look how much trash I've collected in the last year. I feel all fits in a mason jar. I'm like, okay, that's fine if you're a blogger and 22 years old living in Manhattan because you can walk to farmers markets. But I'm a dad of 3 kids living in the suburbs. I got to drive a car. I have to create some trash because it's impossible not to, because we're a dual working household. We are busy. We were busy people
yeah,
with 3 kids who had to go to a school and had to bring certain things. So it was impossible. And so I didn't want to I wanted people to feel like you can do something.
sure.
Every little bit actually counts and you don't have to be perfect. And one thing will lead to the next. And
Yeah.
it's more about ripple effects. Just like, what you're doing with community building, it really is about ripple effects.
Yeah, and it's amazing how much impact can be felt just through relatively small adjustments. Even just getting into the habit of bringing my thermos with me when I go out, the number of cups I don't throw away, it's like at some point it started to hurt in my body to just see me throwing out all of this stuff every time I would buy something, every time I would be I don't know, we were somewhere the other day and I asked for a cup of water and they gave me a plastic cup of water and I drank out of it and then threw it out. And it's like, man, I just generated all that plastic waste for a sip of water. Like this is so bad.
Yeah.
And like I don't want it to your point, I don't want to shame myself for that. We don't want people to feel judged per se because that's just going to make people feel defensive and kind of
Yeah.
push back, but I love that you have that attitude of positivity and just encouraging and inspiring by your model.
Well, if you come to our coffee shop, which we'll get to later, what my business is, we'll probably give you a glass of water and we'll have to wash it and sanitize it, which we do. And
Yeah,
I try to train my staff, like, this is what makes us different. This is part of our brand. We have to do that. I try to teach them certain simple phrasing, which some of us who have studied behavior change, we call behavioral economics. You change the way the system is around someone so they don't actually have to make any changes. You've made it for them. But just by asking someone, "Oh, can I make that for here?"
yeah,
Instead of like to go, do you want it to go, to stay? Most coffee shops default to a to go cup, or they don't
yeah,
have cups here. But we'll say, "Would you like that to stay?" And it's funny because some people will make this look like, you know what? Why not? They weren't planning on staying and sitting, but they were like, "Well, why not? It won't take that long to sit and have a glass of coffee." And then they
yeah,
have it in a mug, and that's one change they just made because we asked in a certain way.
yeah. And so that's what you just called what behavioral economics.
It is. It
Yeah,
is.
and so that's interesting. And then that person has a nicer cup. Maybe they're slowing down a little bit, spending some time in your shop, which maybe
Yep.
doesn't hurt. And that's a beautiful thing.
Connecting to whoever they're with or those around them.
Yeah. Let's talk about that, connecting to
Yep.
people around, each other in your space. You've introduced me to people when I've been
Mhm.
hanging out at your space before. What's that like for you? Like, how does that work in your space on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this, I can talk about it maybe in two different ways. One, like, what was the business decision? Because my logo, um, which we don't do a great job of like branding inside the store, so you might not even know this. But if you go to the website or you find my logo on my business card, it actually says market. It says Eco Evolution Market Space, Meeting Place. So we
Mm.
always had this idea, like, we wanted people to gather here, to meet here. Part of the business, and because we knew we'd have a coffee shop, a part of it, but also we knew that we wanted to meet people where they're at, and we can't just. I didn't want to just be like this tiny little sustainability boutique where not everyone felt comfortable coming. I thought maybe they'll come for a cup of coffee, and while they're there, they'll look at these paperless towels or my soap refill station or the dental floss that's made from bamboo in a glass container. Maybe they'll be exposed to something. So it was part of our behavior change strategy and a way to sell more of the eco-friendly products. but it's also just who I am as a person. So a lot of it was like, well, we have to do this because this is how I am. I wanted a space that's inclusive for everyone, where everyone feels comfortable. My again, I did with you what I train my staff to do, which is we say hello to everyone that walks through the door. And you've been to my space. It's not big. I'm sorry, it's not small. So we might be way on the other side making coffee. You're pretty far, but we will scream over, "Hey, how's it going?" as you walk in. We want to acknowledge everyone that comes in, in whatever way they want to. That's another
Yeah.
thing. All my baristas get to wear what they want, speak to people they want the way they want, because I want them to feel their full selves at work. And it's funny, I get a lot of that. Like, what do you want me to wear? I'm like, wear what you're most comfortable wearing. Like, look awesome because you'll feel awesome. And they
Yeah.
love it. They love it. And my baristas they're so great because
Yeah.
they're just like all of our friends, they're chatting with everybody and it's how we want it. But I just wanted that a place where people would meet up. So in a coffee shop setting, obviously I'm a what we call a third wave coffee shop. There's
Mhm.
Dunkin' is first wave, then Starbucks is second wave, and
Mhm.
third wave is that independent coffee shop, which was always there. But it's like, we're doing specialty coffee, we're doing really high quality drinks, and where that space where like traditionally would get political, maybe like people would
Mm.
come and write letters and get political, or they would have meetings there. It would just became a community hub. And so that's what I wanted my coffee shop to be. I wanted to be a space where people would meet up. Um,
Mm.
I don't know if that's happening organically all the time. Like, what's not happening is what I first envisioned. Like on Tuesdays, I'd have the knitters there, and on Wednesdays, the mommy group would meet there, and that hasn't happened yet. I've tried
Mm.
hard. I think there's probably more I can do to make it happen. But what does happen is we've gotten to know our customers so well. Some of them become fromstomers like you, like a friend customer. You were my customer, you're like a friend. You come in, I feel like you're a friend who's come in, not just any other random customer. And so it becomes very easy for me also because we are your local coffee shop. We know who the regulars are and who aren't. So on a weekday, on a Wednesday at 12, when someone walks in and we haven't ever seen, it's either they're local and it's their first time there, or they're new to the area. And there's a lot of new to the area in South Norwalk. It's transient. And so it's very easy for me to be like, oh my God, well, look, there's Tony. He's such a cool guy and he's kind of new. You should go talk to him. And people really appreciate that actually, because
Yeah.
well, you already said why. You want to come somewhere where you feel part of the community and you're just not a stranger.
Yeah. Which for a lot of people is not something that's obvious or easy, especially if you're new to town. I mean, I'm new to town. Prior to moving to Norwalk, I didn't know anybody here, and might still not if not for your cafe, and so that just having that moment of somebody knows me and somebody is willing to just, say, "Hey, go say hi to this person,"
Yeah.
makes a huge difference in terms
Yes.
of, like, weaving social fabric.
It is, I don't know if my staff does it the way I do it, but we all have superpowers, and I always known that's my superpower. I've always been able to make everyone feel comfortable in whatever setting. Sometimes at the expense of me feeling comfortable, but I've always, I know how to make people feel comfortable, and I know how to connect people because there could be two amazing musicians sitting down in my coffee shop who don't know each other. I've seen one perform at our open mic night. The other one has shared with me that he's in a band and I've listened to it. And so I'm just going to connect them because why wouldn't I? I don't know. To me, it feels like a very natural thing to do. Like you two, you might be busy right now, but you should get to know each other because you both create really awesome music. And
Yeah.
one musician doesn't want to meet another musician in the same town, drinking coffee in the same place.
Yeah, and that just that information transfer,
Mhm.
it's so easy to not know stuff that's going on right under your nose. It's because of you that I got to meet the, wonderful folks who run the record store that just opened.
Yeah, good. Oh,
Got to
yes.
go to their
Mhm.
grand opening. We walked out of there with an armful of records, and
Yeah.
it's like, just we're continuing to kinda get to know people in the town and the local businesses, and, like, we would never have found that record store otherwise.
And there's an interesting community fabric weaving story, actually. Sorry. So the way I met them is the fiance of one of the owners actually owned a local microgreen farm. So she was growing microgreens, very eco-friendly, very healthy. They were all into that. And so I just used to seek people out. Like, you're growing microgreens and mushrooms out of, in buckets. Like, I wanted to see this. So I just sought her out on Instagram. I used to do interviews called I used to do what you're doing right now on Instagram Live with local, what I called ecopreneurs, you
Mhm.
know, entrepreneurs in the eco space. And every Monday, I would interview someone new and I would seek them out. I would do like 15, 20 minutes, 5 questions. And so I interviewed her. I went to see her little urban farm. They ended up moving and then they ended up popping up in my store all the time. I used to give them my coffee grinds to grow mushrooms out of. So I was really connected to her and the farm. And then the first time I was like, why don't you guys like pop up? I don't do this as much anymore, but in the beginning, I'm like, Saturday nights are so fun here. You guys should set up a little table with your microgreens for everyone to try because everyone needs to try microgreen. And then she said, well, my fiance, my boyfriend is a DJ. Can he set up? Yeah, let him set up. And then the next thing his other friend DJ, who's the other co-owner, was DJing there. They ended up DJing at my sober nights. I ended up hiring them to do a lot of parties in my store. And they're just great, cool people who also live in South Norwalk. So it's I don't know. There's always, when you put yourself out in the world and they're willing to talk to your neighbors, you never know what you're gonna find and the cool people you'll meet. And you don't always they don't have to be your best friends, but there's something about being able to walk down the street and be like, oh yeah, that person owns the record shop. I've been there. Hey, how's it going? You know,
Yeah.
it's a cool thing.
Well, one of the things that I'm finding is that just the not having it be total anonymity. You
Yes,
don't need to be a social butterfly. You don't need to be super extroverted or anything like that. Just being known to somebody and knowing a few people in town, that breaking through that layer of just total anonymity, I think makes a huge difference.
it does. Something that, again, I teach my staff. I say, as a local coffee shop, you know what our greatest gift we can give our customers? They would say, the best cup of coffee. I'm like, no, the greatest gift is knowing their name. Like, they're
Yeah.
coming here all the time. It's a little awkward for someone's been here 10 times, you don't even know their name. And this
Yeah.
is why we started our punch card. You got 5 drinks to get one free, but we keep the punch card because we write your name on it. So, oh yeah, because you don't always remember the name, but you have a punch card, don't you? What is it under? Oh yeah, Tony. And then like I get to say your name 3 times. Oh, Tony, let me get it. Here's your card, Tony. And you end up learning everyone's names just by having those cards. Because otherwise you have to say awkwardly, like, what's your name again? So it helps us learn people's name. It also gives people a free coffee after 5, which no one else is doing, which is great. Because we want people coming back.
There's so much deliberate
There is.
strategy and
We don't
thinking
realize
behind.
it, but there
Yeah.
is.
It's there. It's hid like, I feel like I wanna see you teaching a class to other coffee proprietors, be like, how to turn your
I
coffee
would
place,
I would
yeah,
love that. I mean, I have a lot to learn because
yeah,
I guess, yeah, we didn't get into, I mean, I told my story, but the one obvious part I left out is I have no experience in retail and no experience in food service or coffee. I was a public health professional doing international development that got locked down and thought I could create a business because I was an environmentalist. And I thought retail would be an amazing platform to change people's behaviors. And little did I know that retail is so freaking hard. I mean how hard it is now, trying to turn a profit. And I feel less and less like the eco dude every day because cash flow is a little bit more important to me right now to keep the doors open.
yeah,
But it's very hard. Coffee is also not completely hard, but the margins are low, and you have to turn a lot of business over. So getting the business part of it right has been new for me. I loved it. I love it. I'm enjoying it, but it's stressful. It really
yeah.
is.
Well, what would you recommend to somebody who is either running or maybe thinking of running like a physical space like yours, a store or a cafe, with maybe a similar, mission or desire? Like what advice would you give somebody who's kind of in, a few steps behind you?
I mean, I would just say not every space is would work for like a community space. So I wouldn't tell everyone make it a community space. That depends on the people, but I would just say how being nice really is important. We've all been into stores where like they're not really that nice in there. Um,
Yes.
I have to be honest, like, yeah, I'll disclose that I'm a male knitter. I love to say male knitter because I like to break down gender norms. I knit. I'm a very good knitter, actually. And why wouldn't I go to my local yarn shop? You know, just like you would go to your local coffee shop. So in the knitting world, we all know your local yarn shop. But when I go, I often have a really negative experience. I
Mm,
go in, I say, "Look, I'm the only guy here, and I love to knit, but I hate picking out yarn. Like, help me." And I don't get that help that I need. I'm like, I'm not good at colors. I'm not like I don't know much about all the word. Like, I don't know it all. All I know is I'm a good knitter, and
yeah.
I don't get that help that I want, even though I put myself out there. So there's
And
some
and it's like
spaces.
and it's like you're making a deliberate effort not to buy your stuff from Michaels or Amazon at this point. So it's
Yeah.
don't make this harder for me than it
That's
already
true. I mean, I
is.
still don't buy it there. I go to Knit Picks, which is a place, I only buy organic cotton yarn. People are like, oh, you should sell that blanket you made. I'm like, the blanket would cost $500. Did you
Yeah.
understand? And the yarn costs $200.
Yeah.
No one's buying this. But yeah, it is. So that would be my advice to anyone going into whatever they're doing is like your attitude when people walk in is really important. It's also like I'm very authentic, but you're an actor in a way. Not that you're not being authentic, but you have to have stage presence. The show must go on. People, I always say, like, you gotta be stage ready. Like, someone comes in, you could be having a bad day. This is what I really mean. We're authentic, but you could be having a bad day. But guess what? Customer walks in, you still have to say hello. You
Yeah.
still have to be stage ready and go and play this part of being a really awesome, worker at an awesome space. And so that's
Yeah.
what's hard. And in a way, sometimes it's good. Like, leave your shit at home and you don't have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Even sometimes with the younger staff, I have a hard time with this, and I'm sure every single person who owns a shop does. But trying to get young people off their phones while they work is really hard. I try to get them, but no one does this. I say, can't you just create like an eco focus so you can get texts from like 3 people in case there's an emergency, but you don't need to see every push notification. And some of that is because it brings you down. Some of the stuff you
Mm,
get, you don't want during your work time. Like, you
yeah.
want to be able to focus and be happy and do the best you can do. And you don't want all that bringing you down. But it's hard. Everyone is, the young generation is just so attached to their phones and constant information. So it's a bit hard. It's a bit
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. I
The
mean,
one thing I
it's
do hate is if someone so I did get rid of the chair that we had behind our register. I found that people were sitting a lot. And when you sit, you look at your phone. And there was times I walked in where you would have a staff person like this.
yeah. And
Hey.
it, yeah.
And there's nothing more. I'm like, fine, you said hey, but there's nothing less inviting than you sitting looking down at your phone.
Yeah.
I'm like, you can't do that when people are here. You have to be just aware. You don't have to
Yeah.
be talking to every person, but just being aware allows them to ask us a question, open the jewelry case, do whatever it is that they need. So
Yeah.
tough. Those are the tough things. I'm not the best.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like it was only a few years ago that it seemed socially just completely unacceptable for somebody behind a register to be on their phone. And then, maybe post pandemic, some point in the last few years, we've just kind of accepted that this is just the reality of things now. But yeah, it's a tricky thing because that person might be sitting behind the register for long stretches of time with nothing to do. And, how do you kind of
There's
pass
always
that
something to
time?
do. There's
Yeah,
always something to do.
always.
There's always something to do. You know
It's true.
that in work.
Yeah.
There's always a product, there's always a shelf that can be fixed, there's always a product that can be barcoded, there's always, when you have this food service, always something can be cleaned.
Mm,
There's always something to do. So you have to try and teach people that, like, we're not paying you to babysit the store, we're paying you to actively be part of the store and be the vibe of the store.
right. Yeah, which I imagine you probably are able, it's like I'm sure it's a constant kind of struggle or constant process to figure out how to master it. And we're obviously all fighting an uphill battle against these like super addictive screens that we have in our pockets. But I'd like to hope that you have a stronger chance of people kind of buying into it because you're not like big faceless,
Yeah,
corporation,
I hope so. It's not my strength. It's not my strength. Like, management. I did all this in my former job. It's not my strength being like telling people to get off their phones and what
Yeah,
to do. And,
yeah,
one day I'll have a manager who's better at it than me. I
yeah.
think for me, I'm super nice and I try to lead by example. But, sometimes being nice in the service industry where most people aren't, then you can get taken advantage of. Like, oh,
Yeah, I mean that's I I had a similar role running my co-working space where I think I had strength in being a leader, strength in getting people inspired and excited and like kind of like leading the charge. But as a manager, like operating the day to day and doing that well was much harder for me to do well. It wasn't like kind of my natural inclination. And I would definitely like we benefited from getting people in who were more naturally inclined to that role. So Godspeed to just getting far enough to get to that point. What do you want to like? What would you want to see different in terms of the support ecosystem around you? Like, what's missing in terms of how the city or how the world around you does or doesn't support spaces like yours, given the value that you generate?
it's a great question. I want to be mindful how I answer it and try to be positive. But
Take your time and find your words. Yeah. Or I would say this, maybe thinking in terms of other places.
well,
If
no,
if I'm if I'm a city official or a mayor who for some reasons listening to this podcast, like, what would you kind of advise other people in other places to be looking out for?
let me start with. I'm glad you just added that extra piece. It gave me more time to think. There's a certain group of people who I find very supportive in listening to what my challenges are. Well, they ask me, "What are your challenges as a small business person?" And they're the local council people.
Mhm.
They come to my shop, they get coffee. Some of them lead groups in the back because they're part of other committees and stuff. So your local council people, I don't even think they're paid, to be honest. They're like that volunteer local councilor. They make very little. They all have other jobs. They're the ones who I really do love them. I know them now and they come in and I feel safe telling them something that I feel could be better for the city and better for the street. So that's probably the most support that every town has an economic development office. Um, we're going to shift to a plug. Sorry. I forgot about that little detail, but we're going to move right here.
It's great.
Every
We get
town
to
has
see
that
more of your
economic,
house. Look at
yes,
framed art everywhere.
my kids' art wall. So you get to look at money munchers right there.
Oh, money munchers. Love it.
Money hanging out in the hot tub with their gold chains on.
Oh
Yeah,
my goodness. Is that a
that's a
comic? Like, what is that?
I think my son made that in maybe the 4th grade, and maybe it's his view of, like, gangsta life. Who
Love it.
knows?
Money
But I thought it was
munchers.
hysterical. Yeah, this is my kid's art wall. Actually, I made that one when I was a kid, and
Whoa.
he made a very similar one, so okay, back to the Economic Development Office. Every
Yeah.
town has one. You do need to get connected to them because they do have resources, not money, but they can connect you with things. And in Norwalk, our Economic Development Office did a great thing by connecting with a group called Kiva. Oddly, I knew Kiva for the last 20 years because they started in the international development
Right.
space,
Yeah.
right?
And then they went domestic.
It went domestic. I didn't even know it went domestic. And he was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, we have this great program at Kiva." I'm like, "I know Kiva. I already lent to about 100 women around the world through Kiva, and I still do." And it was kind of really cool. So I went out and I was able to get an $8,000 crowdsourced loan. So it's a little awkward because you're asking your customers, family, and friends to give you money, but it gets paid back.
Right.
And it was hard. They were like, "Oh, they thought they were doing a donation." I'm like, "No, this is not a tax write-off. It's not a
Yeah.
donation. You will get your money back in small increments.
Yeah.
And when you get 25 bucks back, you can go and relend it or you cash it
Yeah.
out." Um,
Kiva is like my favorite fantasy football league because I just have money that's been sitting in there cycling through different people for 10 years now. And I get these little emails, so such and such paid you back $2 today. And it's
isn't
like,
it
yeah,
great?
go
I
get
know.
them.
Oh
And
my
it's
god, I
crazy.
never
Like I
thought
could,
of someone has to
yeah,
send me the message like, "Brad has paid you back $2." I'm gonna see one
yeah,
of those emails.
yeah,
Every month it's a no interest. It was a no interest loan.
yeah,
That's the best part about it. It was only 8,000 bucks. Seems like a lot to a normal person. It's really barely covers my rent for 1 month.
Yeah.
But whatever, every little bit helps. And I took advantage of that opportunity because the way the Economic Development Office put it is like, wow, we're bringing all these dollars from random people into our city. And, our city got approved to do this. It's not like every city has this. You can't just apply to get a Kiva loan. You have to go through an approved person who's administering it, and that's Norwalk's Economic Development Office. Besides
Ah,
that,
okay.
Tony, do I get support? Am I subsidized? No, I'm a small business owner who's really like, bootstrapping this. I have a lot of money in this business. I have a small business loan I took out because you came to my store, I think, when the coffee shop was already built. But that came in year two. Year
Mm,
one, that coffee bar was not there. I built it out myself through a big small business loan. Seems like a big one to me, and it's a lot to pay with interest rates that have just risen. My
mhm,
interest rate went from 4% to 11% on that loan, and that alone literally could close my doors because
mm,
it's like 5 to 600 more a month that I have to pay back, and hopefully it will settle down and go back. But um, there's that, and then there's rent, and what can I say? Rents are really high. The best thing a person can do is own their own space, but I don't. And the the street that my store is on, there's probably 10 empty storefronts on the street, I think, because rent is too high and there's really no daytime foot traffic.
mhm.
So the biggest support I could ask for, to be honest, and I actually say this to people all the time, and I don't do it to shame them. And me, I say it in the nicest way. If I see someone and I haven't seen in a long time, and I know they live in the building right above me, I say, "Hey, don't forget your local coffee shop. One coffee a week, just one coffee a week."
Yeah.
But, people forget how important it is, and it's money. I get it. It's like I'm not asking someone to come and spend $5 every single day on a coffee, but once a week by your locals means so much because my story is super dope. I know that. I've created it to be dope. It has a huge vibration that people love, and the vibes are so high. But if people don't come, you know what store I am? I'm that one they love to say when it closed, "We had that amazing store there." Or, I get a lot of people who bring when their families visit, they bring their families to show them my store.
Yeah.
Because what are you supposed to do after brunch and like the football game? It's like, let's walk around town. Well, guess what? If you live on our street, there's not a lot of retail, and there is one really exceptional, awesome store. So we do get a lot of people bringing their family and friends, but then people drop off and we don't see them. And I would just love everyone to come and get at least one coffee a week. um it's slow month, we get scared
Mm,
that we can't pay our rent
yeah.
every slow month.
Yeah.
And I think you've noticed we've changed our opening time. We moved it an hour and a half because no one was coming in. So you make that business decision to risk the four people who did come in during those early times. But it's like, how do you stay open for an hour and a half when only four people come in? So
Mhm.
it's tough. It's tough. We have I think any other coffee shop would be appalled by my traffic that I get. 'Cause if I was only a coffee shop, I wouldn't survive. If I was only a retail store, I wouldn't survive. So thank God I have both.
Yeah. Well, that diversification makes a huge difference. We've seen that. I've seen that in a few different ways. There's this book this woman Melody Warnick wrote called "This Is Where You Belong," and it's all about a lot of the stuff we've talked about. And one of the things that she mentioned in that book was this notion that if everybody just spends a little bit more every month, I think it was like, I don't know, $20, $50 a month, whatever it is, on local businesses as opposed to online or big box chains, that the collective power of citizens doing that in a given area can make all of the difference. So we want to buy a book, the book's $10 on Amazon and it's $18 at the local bookstore. I can't afford to buy every single book for the marked up price, but I could buy a few, like, and just having a little bit of
You can
commerce, a
afford it
little bit of,
actually. It's only $8. There's like you could just there's I always say there's like you could do one less thing a month that will allow you
yeah,
to afford that book. Maybe you
yeah,
don't go out one night because
yeah,
one meal could cost you $200. Now that
yeah,
is also a local restaurant. But
Yeah.
like, okay, we used to eat 4 times a month. We got once a week. Maybe now we skip one, but we say,
Mhm.
let's spend that $200 still in our community and
Yeah.
spread it out and spread it out. Because
Yeah, and but
it's
to
funny
that
what people
behavior
will pay
modification,
for.
it's like small adjustments.
Mhm.
But one of the other things I'm supremely interested in, because this is true in the co-working world as well, is people with spaces where just giving them a reason to come in, generating that foot traffic could make all the difference. And so you had mentioned this vision of having, knitting groups on Tuesdays and another group on Wednesday, things like that. Those are things that should be happening. And there's really, uh, I think it's just a matter of finding the right formula, putting in the right effort, reaching the right people, making that message known. And I
Yeah.
think that that's actually one of the things that is very actionable for us,
Yeah.
that we can make that more visible, we can make that more apparent. Brad, one of the things that I witnessed over the course of the last 16 years was this co-working movement, which started out in living rooms and in cafes,
Mm.
where we said, when I got into this in 2007, the idea of having a laptop with Wi-Fi was still fairly new. So the idea of, I've been sitting at home working by myself. I haven't, seen another human in days, but I can leave the house. And I found other people on the internet who were doing the same thing. And they were saying, hey, we're all over at this cafe. Come hang with us every Thursday. And that led to a lot of those people ended up building the first co-working spaces in their
That's
cities,
so cool.
and it was all just a very basic, simple idea that anybody could copy and remix all over the world. That's why we call it the co-working movement. If you want
Yeah.
to start a co-working space and wherever you are, you can go online, find other people who have done this, who are all very friendly and sharing with each other. And I feel like that model can be replicated for lots of other things, knitting groups or whatever, what have you. And
Yeah.
it's more just a matter of kind of telling that story and
It
maybe
is.
lowering that barrier. So
I
you and
think
I
that,
will be
yeah.
discussing this
Let's discuss
extensively.
it. I've heard I should get on Facebook and kind of troll the groups and say, come meet here, a book club.
Yep.
Um, I am a little, I didn't think I would have to recruit people to work. Like you wanted to talk about third workspace. I didn't think I would have to recruit. I thought if you build it, they would come at least for that aspect. Because when have you seen a cafe with like not no, they don't have a ton of people
It's
sitting there
true.
working? And I actually don't get a lot. It makes me a little bit sad because I actually paid for. I don't know if you realize this, but I put in all those plugs in the back, the two on the floor by that back table, because
Hmm.
this building's from 1860. We had one, like two plugs in the back. I put plugs throughout the whole store. I had to pay for this stuff. My landlord didn't
Yeah.
pay for it. I did
Yeah.
it because I wanted to attract people and have enough places to plug in. So we get some. I won't say we don't get, but I always thought there'd be a bunch of people I didn't know. I'm trying to get inroads with Norwalk Community College. That takes
Mm.
time. I offer them a 10% discount every day if they come. I just need to advertise these things more and just, put more effort to that piece of the business. And I
Yeah.
haven't had time.
Well, well, now you got me. We're gonna work on the co-working side of it.
Yes, I love it.
I'm very
I've been
excited.
telling people about it.
And yeah, I think there's more that we can play with there. Part of it is getting that word out and just getting people talking, and I think that'll make a big difference.
I do wonder
Um,
from your perspective, this whole going out to a third workspace has decreased post COVID because, I'm a kid of the 80s. Now, I went to college in the 90s. We all worked in coffee shops. Like that's what we
yeah.
did. Friends coffee shop, Central Perk. Like that was when Friends was hot, as when I was in college. I always worked, sometimes in the library, sometimes in a coffee shop, never in my dorm room or my room. And I just like, I don't know. I just am surprised by how many people I know actually work at home and come in for an afternoon cortado or coffee, but they don't come in to work. And I wonder two things. One, if work has become so Zoom meeting focused that it's hard to be in a third workspace, as everyone's always on a meeting. And, you know, but there's people that take meetings from my store. I kind of love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I've taken
I
meetings
wonder
and
what it
this
is.
works great.
Yeah, are less
But
people going out and working in third workspaces post COVID? Everyone's so
yeah, no, I
comfortable.
think Zoom has been a major factor in that. I mean, there's other factors as well, just in terms of inertia and, social atrophy. But I think Zoom is a factor, but it's something that people can plan around. And so when I first got into the co-working thing before it was in a space, we would plan. We'd say, it's only every other Thursday that at first. And so I would try to block out my time and say, I'm going to try to avoid having big meetings on that day. I'm going to make a little room on my calendar, and that's going to be a time when I'm going to make this a priority. You start with the early adopters, the folks who are in a position to really pave the way for the next phase of folks. But it is very interesting, just zooming back to this question of people gathering in space, and them finding you, because I was friendly with the meetup folks for a long time in New York City, and they consistently said the number one challenge for a meetup organizer was finding a consistent place to gather.
Hmm.
And so, just knowing I've got a venue that I can go hang out in might be a matter of just making it more explicit, like, hey, we are soliciting, for people to apply or whatever to gather in the space. But we'll discuss that more.
Yeah. Now we do have the Norwalk. I always say it wrong. The Norwalk Action for Reproductive Justice group. They meet MySpace every month. They use MySpace as their meeting space. Um, they're the only ones I know who consistently have chosen MySpace to meet, which I love.
Hmm.
And then I have one-offs, book readings and book sign, but those are different than just meetings. They're people looking to use. I've had one book club come once and use it, but they
Hmm.
rove. Like I get that.
Yeah.
All right, Meetup. I
We
never
are.
thought about Meetup. I never thought about like the website Meetup where people are actually trying to meet up to do things.
Yeah, and like Meetup tried for a while to do something where they kind of match made venues and things like that, but I think there's a lot of territory left for us to explore that I want to play with some more. So we will keep everyone posted on
All
how
right.
that plays out. But Brad, I want to wrap up with a couple of questions.
Okay.
I want to start off with a book. What is a book that you are just loving and that you just want to sing from the rooftops, either recent or all time?
Oh my God, I knew you were going to ask this, and I really struggle with this, and it's easy to default to like of all time,
Yeah,
but
it can just literally be whatever pops into your mind. You won't be
well,
judged, by your choice here.
thank you for not
At
judging me
least not
because
by me. I mean, I don't know,
I've only
the
had
internet.
time to read one book in the last 2 years because of opening a store. I have very little free time, but I'm going to be open and share the book I'm reading. It's kind of sad. I'm not going to say it's the most amazing book of all time, but it's a little bit about my own story. But
It's
I'm reading it.
Twilight, isn't it? It's
Um,
Twilight. No, I'm
I'm reading a book
kidding.
called No, it's not Twilight. Actually, it's not a bad idea. Um, it's called The Journey from Abandonment to Healing, and it's a book
Oh.
that's really helped me over the last year and a half. I've experienced some abandonment, some severe abandonment, and I had to open a store and run a store while going through a very personal, challenging time. So every day I pat myself on the back. I say, "Look what you created," while going through something really freaking hard.
Mm.
And I'm coming to the end of it. I am reading the final phase of the abandonment cycle, and I really feel I'm at that phase, and the book helps me like I'm there. And so I feel amazing for that. And I think like when I have my full true heart and self, everything focused on this business is going to even just take off. So these
Yeah.
last 2 years have just been the pre-show or the appetizer. I think the real business is about to take off. Hopefully, if I can keep cash
Yeah.
flow going, got to keep cash
Yeah.
flow going.
Gotta
But
keep it
I think there's
going.
a lot more to come because I feel that I've healed a lot and I can put more into it.
We had one summer, a few months, I guess it was less than a year after I opened kind of our larger co-working space, that we threw a big party on the last day of the month, and we generated several $1,000s in income. It was like the most money we ever made from a party. And then the money went into the bank, and then it left the bank like the next day. And it was like, wow, I don't know how we would have paid rent if we didn't throw that party. It's like sometimes you got to, throw the Save the Empire Records little party. But
Yes.
Brad, God bless you
Thank you.
for moving through that healing journey and continuing to grow into it. the roots are growing into the earth, and the leaves are starting to pop out. That's a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm pushing through to get us to the finish line here.
Yep.
I ask everybody about a recipe. It's a whole other side of this notion of belongfulness,
Yep.
connecting to food, connecting to tradition, things like that. Is there a particular recipe that is particularly close to your heart?
Yes, well, I grew up in a foodie family. My dad was a wholesale food distributor, so food was what literally brought in the bacon and connected us. And I grew up with food being the connector. So I love that question. And I decided in reading your question to choose a cookbook instead of a recipe because I actually go to this cookbook a lot and it's timely right now. It's the cookbook called Jerusalem, written by a Palestinian chef and Israeli chef. And it truly, I just think, wow, everyone should go buy this right now because it's so timely and it just shows how food really can connect you and that people are so much more alike than different. And, food often when you're living in one region of the world, your food is so similar. And so I love cooking from there. I've made my own baklava from there. I've made some tagines from there. I made shashuka from there. I love this book. It's really awesome. The pictures are amazing, and you're learning both about the Palestinian um, areas and Israel all at the same time through pictures and recipes. So
That region
Jerusalem,
has some unbelievable food. I'm a
yes,
big fan of shakshuka
me too,
personally.
me too.
Yeah,
So easy
that's
to
great.
make.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and finally, how do people find you and your wonderful shop on the internet?
All right. Well, I am online at ecoevolution.co. This is a big this is a big problem I'm having, but
Yeah.
that M would have cost me $90,000. So I went to CO and it cost 18.99, and that's what I could afford at the time. When you see my or my whole website change to .com, you know I made it. All right. So right now, right now it's ecoevolution.co. It's the same on Instagram at ecoevolutionco. And then my personal people can all, I think you had it up there already, is the .eco.dude. There is the eco dude. He never posted anything. I think he just poached the name because he knew I was going to take it. Or
Bummer.
she. But yeah, the .eco.dude on Instagram and Facebook and Eco Evolution Co. And if you actually want to shop online, you go to ecoevolution.co.
Lovely. Brad, such an amazing chat. Looking forward to doing awesome things with you. Make Norwalk a wonderful, belongful place to be.
Love it.
And I'll see you soon, man.
See you soon. See you at the shop.
All right. Thanks
All
again.
right, Tony. Thanks for being a great frontstemer. We appreciate you.
Love it.
All
Love
right.
it.
Take care.
All right.
Bye bye.